Awesome. Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. Thank you guys so much for coming. It's so exciting to see everybody here, and happy International Happiness Day. I'm Lisa Young. For those of you who do not know me, I am a HR coach. I work in human resources, and I'm also the founder of HRHQ, which is an education and community platform for HR professionals. So I am so excited to be here partnering with Stephen and the team at Extraordinary to host our guest from Australia, Declan Edwards. Declan is a happiness expert, researcher, LinkedIn top voice, podcaster, and also recently a TEDx speaker. So Declan and I, we connected on LinkedIn almost just over a year ago now, and we hit it off pretty quickly. We had a shared passion for all things engagement and employee experience, and he came into my membership, I think it was about a year ago yesterday, and did a presentation with my members, and it was so fantastic, it was so well received, and it, to me, was a bit of a game changer in how I could articulate the employee experience. So I know we're in for an absolute treat today. The topic that we are going to be delving into today is happiness and HR goal worth prioritising. So very timely, given that it is International Happiness Day, but also because of the climate and the area that we're working in right now in the workplace. It's tough out there. It's becoming harder and harder to engage our employees, to keep our employees happy. The landscape is changing so much, and there is so much happening out there that are impacting our people. So I think it's a really important discussion. I think from an HR lens, it's never been a better time to work in HR. I think post-COVID and with the move towards more of a strategic approach rather than a transactional administrative function. But I also think it's never been harder, and I know that today's lessons and discussions will be really, really helpful with that. So that's actually something Declan and I spoke about recently, and I won't go into that today, but you can listen in. We had a podcast episode drop today on his podcast, How to Be Happy at Work, and we spoke all about the world as it currently is and what that looks like. So super excited to be here. Stephen, having you on board is awesome too, very aligned in our messaging and our approach, so I know that it's going to be a really great event. So without further ado, I will hand over to Declan, and I'm really looking forward to learning from you.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Can we extend that round of applause and recognition and appreciation to Lisa and to Steve and the team at Extraordinary for making this happen. It feels almost too fitting that on International Happiness Day, I'm doing my first live talk in New Zealand. When I've come from Australia a couple of days ago, flew across, and I'm honoured and thrilled to be able to share some of the work that I've been doing for the last 10 years now. So I've spent the last 10 years of my career studying the science of happiness. And for those who don't know, there is a field of research called positive psychology that's dedicated to the empirical understanding of what it means to live a happy and fulfilled life. And my work for the last decade has been shaped by this. I fell in love with it and started a social enterprise called BU Happiness College 8 years ago now, with the idea of imagine a space where people could go to learn the skills that made them happier human beings, not just the skills to be a better employee. Skills like emotional intelligence, compassion, empathy, and self-awareness. We now have members and graduates of that college in 5 countries and feel like we're making a real ripple effect out there in the world. And then in 2019, out of all years, we decided if we're really serious about our vision of growing global happiness, we need to change the way we work. We need to look more seriously at organisations and the employee experience. And interestingly enough, which I wasn't expecting, the first place this took off when I started talking about that more was the US. Out of all places, Texas. Not somewhere I thought would have been a mecca for happiness, but there we go. And so I went across to Texas and worked with this company, and they said, Declan, we're desperate for something to improve our employee experience, and we want to know more about the research you're doing about how happiness is defined and measured in an organisational setting. Can you work with our team? And I said, well, I've never done that before. And they said, treat it just like working with a bunch of individuals and see what happens. And what happened was the most interesting next month of my working career, because I'll be honest with you, I had no idea what I was doing. I'm so grateful they let me experiment on them. It worked out all right, thankfully. But then as that experiment continued, after that month I came back to Australia and went, maybe there's something here. Maybe we've stumbled across something interesting. And so I spent the last 5 years, I did my master's thesis specifically studying how do we define and measure happiness as a strategic KPI. And I'm fortunate to now see organisations and partner with organisations in the US, Australia, and Germany, again, out of all places, to start measuring happiness as a strategic KPI that their leaders are held accountable to, and as a predictor of other metrics that have previously been considered remarkably valuable to the people and culture experience. I'm sure you're going to recognise some of them tonight. I'm talking to a room that's very aware of this. Now, to start things off and have a little test, I want to open with a bit of a game, if that's okay. Because I want this to be a bit of a dialogue, not just a monologue. And this game might reveal my age a little bit. So I hope you guys can stay with me. Put your hand up if you remember the TV show Whose Line Is It Anyway? Oh my God, this is one of the best rooms I've ever been in. Yes, you're my people. I said that recently at a talk that I gave at a conference and 2 hands went up and I went, everyone, you know what, forget what I was going to talk about for the rest of tonight. We're going to talk about why you need to go watch this show. I don't need to give you that talk, you've all watched it. So for those who have watched Whose Line Is It Anyway, which is nearly all of us, does anyone want to shout out to me, how did the point system work on that show? Does anyone remember? Drew Carey was the host, it's been a while. How are points given?
Randomly.
Randomly is correct. Now I use a very similar point system when I talk. I call them arbitrarily made up happiness points. I've done this for as long as I've spoken as a keynote speaker. I give away happiness points to people who are bold enough to have a go and have an answer and have a guess and be involved. And so to start us off, so what was your name? Who got this one? Jill. Jill is going to receive, get ready for this, there's always a bit of a ooh. In fact, I want to hear that sound effect when we award Jill with 50 arbitrarily made up happiness points. Ooh, Jill, you lucky duck. They're worth absolutely nothing. I want to say this very clearly, they're worth nothing. You're not going to get anything from them. But every talk I give, there is a handful of people in the room, about 5% of the audience, who gets weirdly competitive about getting the most made up happiness points. So if you're sitting there, I just watched who it was going to be, thank you. If you're sitting there going, yeah, I'm going to win this, go for it, right? So to start us off, I'm going to give away some arbitrarily made up happiness points. In preparation for tonight's event, obviously the overarching thesis of tonight is happiness, an HR goal worth pursuing and prioritising. Not to give anything away, I'm going to argue yes. I'm going to argue in the affirmative. But to back it up, I looked into what are people saying are workplace priorities for 2025. In this modern era of work that we live in, where we've gone through this disruption of the pandemic, we're currently navigating this disruption of machine learning and artificial intelligence, we're navigating global uncertainty, we're navigating financial crises. In this modern era of work, what are workplaces saying are their critical priorities for this year? I found 5 common threads, 5 things that a lot of the thought pieces and thought leaders, the articles, the journalists were saying, this is what's important in 2025. For 100 made up happiness points per correct answer. Not to rapidly devalue your stash there, Jill, but we will give 100 per correct answer on this. Anyone want to have a guess?
Well-being.
You were quick on the mark there. 100 points for me. Not quite well-being. We'll get there.
AI, like the integration of AI.
Okay, we're looking good.
Remote working.
Remote working, what else?
Resilience.
I feel like an auctioneer whenever I do. More, right? Any other guesses? Anyone have I'm going to reveal them soon. You can tell me if you got 100 points. Yes?
Leadership development.
Leadership development, what else?
Cost reduction.
Whoa, okay, 3 at once. Let's go here first. People. Return to office. Someone at the back said something? Productivity. Flexibility. These all sound like really good things to have. You guys are on the right track. Let's see how we went. So, utilising emerging technologies. Over here we're going to give away 100 points. Right, major priority for this year. Navigating an intergenerational workplace. And this is the first time in a long time. Has anyone, be honest with me, who has had the thought at work in the last month, these kids? Me too. Me too. Let me promise you, when you were going into the workforce, the people before you said the same thing. So what else do we have? Bridging the skills gap. came through. We're noticing more and more, I mentioned the human skills of happiness. These are skills that more and more organisations are asking for and asking for proof of. There's an emerging skills gap and talent gap that we need to solve. Increasing productivity and performance, we had an answer over here. Winner, winner. And customer and client life cycle. How do we keep people working with us for longer? All sound pretty important. Now, I would argue that all 5 of these priorities, that all the thought leaders, all the strategic thinkers, all the researchers and the journalists are saying, these 5 things are coming through pretty commonly as of critical importance this year. I would argue all 5 of them are underpinned by the same thing. They're all underpinned by enhancing workplace happiness and the employee experience. I'm going to show you why tonight. And I'm going to show you why in 2 ways. I'm going to talk about why happiness matters from the heart. And I have a feeling, a lot of people in this room, we're people in culture background, this is going to be my audience when I talk about the heart. I was saying I did a similar talk to this recently for a major accounting conference in Australia. And when I said I'm going to talk to you guys from the heart about the moral and ethical importance of happiness, crickets. So in case you're in the room and you're an accountant, how'd you get in here? Or 10% of the audience of every talk I ever give is what I lovingly call a happiness skeptic. And they've come along tonight to prove me wrong. And I'm ready for it. Been doing this for 10 years, that's rumble, okay? So, if you are a happiness skeptic, I'm also going to talk about why happiness matters from the head, in terms of the logic, the strategic impact, the return on investment that we can actually see and that we know from amazing research, not just done by myself and my team, but by organizations like UC Berkeley, like Yale, and like Harvard. This has been going on for a while now. I'm going to talk to you about the impact of happiness in 3 tiers. How it impacts us as individuals, how it impacts our organisations and teams, and how it impacts the world as a whole. Very fitting for International Happiness Day. But to do this, and to have a meaningful conversation about happiness, we need to make sure that we're actually all on the same page with what happiness is. And surprisingly, that's kind of difficult. So when I first started diving into happiness research, 8 years ago I started studying positive psychology and getting really curious about the science of happiness. What I found is we've been asking this question for about 3,000 years. And I decided that I was going to be the one to solve it in my lifetime. Ambitious. Naive, maybe. I want to give 2 ideas about what happiness actually is that I've landed on after 10 years of studying it. First and foremost, happiness is actually an umbrella term for a whole range of emotions. A lot of the time, one of the resistance points I see when people think of happiness is we think of it as a trivial, fleeting feeling. Something that comes quickly and goes quickly. But when we look at it from a happiness researcher lens, what we actually see is there's this whole collection of feelings that sit under the banner of happiness. And yes, joy, pleasure, excitement, they're all there. But so is contentment. So is meaning. So is purpose, contribution, pride. And so when I talk about happiness tonight, I want you to broaden your definition of happiness to include these terms and think about how do we invoke those in our team and at our workplace. Not just joy and pleasure and accomplishment, but meaning, purpose, connection, contribution, these other forms of happiness that also have a role to play. The second frame I'd like you to think about when it comes to happiness is that it's actually a skill set. This was the biggest breakthrough for myself when I started doing the research into happiness. And a little bit of background, I got into researching happiness because I was a thoroughly unhappy person. Right? People think, oh wow, this guy seems pretty naturally happy these days. No, this is a lot of work, right? And still a lot of work. It's ongoing. What I learned was that often I would think of soft skills, or we try to call them human skills now in the research, because they're skills that we do exceptionally well as human beings, ideally. Soft skills like compassion, like empathy, like emotional intelligence, like self-esteem and self-worth, I kind of thought you were either born with it or you weren't. For a long time I was like, well, I'm not a confident person. And even before every talk I give, I've been doing this for years now, I still get incredibly anxious before every talk. What I learned over time, thanks to some great mentors and resources, was that you can actually learn these things. You can learn to be more resilient. You can learn to enhance your confidence and self-worth. And that's what we've been doing for 7 years as an organisation now. And so when we think about happiness, I want you to think, if nothing else from tonight, you go, happiness is an umbrella term and is a skill set that really matters. So let's start talking about impact. This is where the science gets really fascinating. We know for a fact that happiness makes a hell of a difference to us as individuals. And I can prove this. There's 2 ways I'm going to prove this. First way we're going to prove this, and I hope you can all trust me on this, In fact, don't trust me on it. Why not? Happiness skeptics in the room, challenge me. Let's test it. I want you to think of a goal that matters to you for this year. I don't care if it's a professional goal. I don't care if it's a personal goal. I don't care if it's a big goal, small goal. Doesn't matter. Just think of a goal that you're like, this matters to me. I want to pursue it. And give me a little nod when you've got the goal, so I know we're just not just sitting there, eyes glazed over. Gorgeous. Okay, so we get our answer. We have a goal. We've probably all got different goals. Now I want you to ask yourself, out of all the goals you could have just selected, why that goal? Why that goal out of everything? What do you hope that brings to your life or to your work, wherever the goal's set? And you'll go a little level deeper. Give me a little nod when you get to that. It's going to get progressively harder because I'm forcing you to introspect. You're welcome. Right? And then when you get to that level, we're going to go one more time. Why out of everything you could want in life, why does that matter to you? And you'll go a little bit deeper again. It's a technique called the 5 whys theory. It originally came out of Japan and it was used to diagnose problems in the workplace. Right? Why did this happen? Don't solve the actual issue, go back and solve the cause. Positive psychologists came along and co-opted that and took it and found it was a really great way to get to emotional depth in people's goals. It stacks value to people's goals. It turns it from something trivial and surface to deeply meaningful. By the time you get 5 whys deep, you feel something. What they weren't expecting was that it became remarkably clear that there were 2 answers people would land on by the time they got 5 deep, regardless of culture, age, background, gender, experience, regardless even of what the starting goal was. The vast majority of thousands of people that they did this on would land on 2 answers. Because I want what? Happiness is one. 100 made up happiness points to you.
Something to do with family.
Not deeper than family. You're on the right vein. So happiness is one.
Love.
Love. Happiness and love. I think it's quite fascinating that regardless of what the goal is, regardless of what matters to you in life, regardless of what your values are, regardless of your background experience, as human beings, we have this shared desire to live a life of happiness and a life of love. In fact, psychologist Daniel Gilbert said it really well. He said, we fundamentally do not set goals that are void of the pursuit of happiness. It's baked into us, into our DNA. So if you can speak to that in an organisational setting, if you can speak to the core human nature, what do you think happens to people's working experience? It's quite profound. The other reason I can prove this is, for a lot of the time, we have had the relationship between success and happiness backwards. This is great research. Has anyone come across The Happiness Advantage by Sean Aker? If you haven't, check it out. Fantastic book. I'd say in my top 5 all-time greats in happiness researchers. He headed the happiness research program at Harvard for quite a few years. It's a book called The Happiness Advantage. He came along and he found an interesting phenomenon in human beings called the hedonic treadmill, or the happiness trap. And I guarantee you've all been on it. Some of you might be on it right now. It's quite exhausting. I get on it sometimes. It's not good for us. It's not like a normal treadmill. The happiness treadmill is I'll be happy when. Insert whatever you want after it. Right? And I've had every answer under the sun. I've been at conferences, events where people say, I'll be happy when I get a partner, and the very next person said, I'll be happy when I leave my partner. Another person say, I'll be happy when I have kids, and then someone shouted from the back of the room, no you won't. They said, you'll be happier when they grow up and move out of home. I'll be happy when I get a new job, when I get a pay rise, when I buy a house. Like, we're always chasing happiness around the next accomplishment. And so what Sean Aker and his team found was we have this idea where success precedes happiness. When we achieve success, then we feel happy. But what have you noticed about the happiness trap? I'll be happy when, and we set our target. As you get closer to it, what happens to it? It's a cheeky little fucker, isn't it? Am I allowed to swear here? I just did. We move the bar higher, or we move it to somewhere entirely different in life. Right? We set the goal of a fitness goal, and I'll be happy then, and then we go, no, health didn't do it, I need more money. And no, now I need to be in a relationship. We chase it. And so what Sean and his team started looking into was, what if we've had this relationship backwards for thousands of years? What if happiness doesn't follow success, but success follows happiness? Specifically, as people learn those happiness skills, the human skills, are they more successful? And they found something quite fascinating. So this is one of their studies that they did. They found that people's ability to solve complex problems increased when they learned these happiness skills. They spent 12 weeks teaching people basic happiness skills. And then they gave them a bunch of problems to solve. And they did a lot better. They found that people had solved these problems, they made better decisions, there's something called the pro-social effect of happiness. They became nicer to be around. You notice when you're around a genuinely a genuinely happy person, it kind of is contagious, it rubs off on you. And so these people kind of like spread this little happiness ripple effect that made them better and made the people around them better. It was fascinating. And what he concluded, and some of his team concluded, was that happy employees are 12 to 20% more productive than unhappy employees. I'm going to give everyone these slides so you can take it back to your workplaces and your teams. You say, I met this guy from Australia. Look, right? Happiness matters. So we know that on a fundamental level, happiness is critically important to us as human beings. It improves our functionality, improves our performance, it improves our decision making. And rather than gambling happiness as an outcome of success, we flip it and we live what I call a more fulfilled life. I often reflect now for myself, my loved ones, my community, that success at the expense of happiness is one of the most common failures in our society. I cannot tell you how many people I've met, sat down with, counselled, supported, coached, who are remarkably successful at a deep, deep cost to their happiness. And I don't want any of us to end up in that position. My hope for tonight is that if you find yourself on that path where you're thinking happiness will follow success, maybe you change it. And we will do questions at the end, don't you worry, you stay with me. So not only on an individual scale is this important, I promise as well we would look at the impact on organisations. So what happens at an organisational level? When we look at happiness in an organisational area, there's kind of 3 areas we need to look at. So any guesses? If I said, hey, there are 3 key stakeholders that we need to make happy for a really thriving and successful organisation, who are the 3 stakeholders? Shareholders? Customers?
Employees.
Oh, damn, 3 for 3. Look at us go. So we have employee happiness or the employee, oh yeah, all 100 points each. Thank you. And 50 points for keeping me on track. I told you I'd give them away like candy. So we have the employee experience or employee happiness. We have customer experience. Anyone worked in the customer experience space before, you know that's a heavily researched area. And we have shareholder value. Historically, for the last couple of 100 years, which ones do you think have got the most focus?
Shareholder.
Then shareholder, customer, mate. So yeah, for the last 100 years it's looked like this. Shareholder value, maybe if we have a little bit of focus left, we'll focus on our customers and try to take better care of them. And then in the little bit of resourcing that we have left, sure, go do something for the employees. That's been the last 100 years of companies. In fact, for a long time, the legal definition of a company in the US was to serve the interests of its shareholders and stakeholders. Which means you could be legally held liable and sued if you did something that was deemed good for the planet, good for your customers, good for employees, but bad for shareholders. And we wonder how we've ended up with the world that we have. Thankfully, there's been a change recently. The legal definition of a company has been updated. And shareholders or stakeholders has been expanded to include the communities that you work within, the people who work for you, the customers that you serve. We're expanding what it means to be a successful organisation, which is thrilling. It's a great time to live in. And this isn't just theory. This isn't just conceptual. There's some great organisations who are already doing this, who came along and went, hang on, what if, hypothetically, call me crazy, we really looked after our staff and they were really fulfilled at work and they were really happy and they performed and they made better decisions because of that advantage we spoke about earlier. What would that then lead to in the customer experience? Anyone ever interacted with an organisation you can just tell when you walk in that their employees hate being there? Yes. Did you want to go back? No. And on the other side, have you had an interaction where you went in and were like, wow, this employee seems to be really good at their job and really likes it? Again, it's contagious. So a few organisations, has anyone heard of Zappos? Yeah, so Tony Hsieh was a big pioneer of this. Great book called Delivering Happiness. I was distraught to find out that Zappos, growing up in Australia, there's a little lolly that was sold at like school canteens, mainly during like swimming carnivals, called a Zappo. I kid you not, for the first year of doing this research, I thought that was the Zappos company. I was like, the lolly guy started this? Unfortunately not. So Zappos is an online shoe retailer that sold to Amazon a few years ago. Very different to the lollies. But Tony Hsieh was their big pioneer, the CEO who came out and said, this model is broken. If we prioritise employee happiness, and the employee experience, they're going to take better care of our customers. Now, our customer experience goes up anyway. Now, our customer experience goes up, we get more referrals, more repeat business, less, poor reviews and poor working experience. What happens to shareholders? Turns out they get pretty bloody happy as well. Right? It ends up being really good for the business. And as I said, this isn't theory. These companies are already doing it. These are some of the biggest ones. There's lots of small companies doing this as well, but these are some of the biggest ones that have come out and specifically said we want to lead by employee experience and employee happiness. Now, it is debatable how well some of them are doing it. Right? I want to call that out straight away. Even like my heart child, the one that I love, like Patagonia, I know recently did some really shitty stuff with return to office mandates. So I want to highlight this. They're not doing it perfectly, but they're doing it. They're starting that journey, which I think is, I'm not a fan of, let's wait till we get it right. I'm like, start. You'll figure it out as you go. Because what we know is that the current way of working isn't working. So worst case scenario, we're just trying something else that hopefully will be better. And the research says will be better. So much so does the research say will be better. Companies rated best places to work have outperformed the S&P 500 index by a pretty fair margin for the last few decades. We also know that the highest wellbeing workplaces have higher stock performance. Right? And what this lands on is that companies that effectively appreciate employee value enjoy return on equity and assets more than triple that experienced by firms who don't. This was where I finally won over the accountants a couple of weeks ago. I think this was the point where they started listening to me. Yeah, they were like, graphs? Research? Let's go. Right? So we know that it makes a difference. Sean Aker, the guy I mentioned before, his team found that on average, the ROI for an organisation intentionally investing in the employee experience and leading with happiness in the workplace, and I'll talk about how to do that, they found that for every dollar you put in, they got about $2.67 to $3.27 in benefits over 12 months. Now, I'm not a gambling man, but if I said to you there is a stock right now on the market that you can put $1 into and in 12 months it will either make you or save you $3, what would everyone do straight after this? We'd go buy it. And this is the part of the talk where I'd like to announce my new cryptocurrency, Happy Coin. No, I'm kidding. It's a rug pull. It's a scam. No, so we know that it makes a difference financially. 3 to 1 on average, right? And we can see where that comes from. You guys can probably guess. How do we get that money back? Where does that come from? Employee happiness goes up. Retention is better. We're not spending as much on recruitment and upskilling people. It's estimated at the moment the cost of replacing a staff member is anywhere of 50% of their salary to 3 times their salary, depending on their field and expertise. It's a lot of money to drop. What else? Where else do we make that money? Productivity, less mistakes being made. We spoke about decision making before, and sales. So they measured this. They tested it in sales teams. They split test sales teams. They took an organisation, split it in half, took half a sales team, half the sales team didn't do any training. Trained them in the skills and science of happiness, gave budget and resourcing to upskilling happiness and to prioritising the employee experience. What they found was that happy teams generated an average of 37% more sales than unhappy teams. This is the part where I feel like doing a mic drop every time, but I'm not going to do it, okay? I'm not going to damage the mic. So overall, like we see just statistically, time after time, all these studies coming back going, hey, happiness matters, to the point where Dr. Noel Nelson concluded that when employees feel that the company takes their interests to heart, the employees will take the company interests to heart. Right? We must lead first. Now, what does that look like? I want to be clear with everyone here. We've spoken a lot about why happiness matters, but that's not why we're all here tonight. Right? I could be on my soapbox and just convince you and then leave it there and you'd walk out going, interesting, what the hell do I do with it, Declan? Right? What I've been interested in, particularly for the last 5 years of my research, was how do we actually do this? How? Because all these studies have been coming back for 2 decades now, showing that it's valuable and important. Why aren't more organisations doing it? And it turns out more organisations aren't doing it because when you look at the science and the evidence and the strategy of prioritising the employee experience, of prioritising happiness, it looks like this. It is a jumbled mess. It's overwhelming, right? And the idea, you guys can probably guess, who do you think normally gets lumped in an organisation with, hey, we saw this dude speak at a conference. We want to prioritise the employee experience and prioritise happiness. Do something with it. Where does that go? And you guys don't have enough on your plate already, do you? Not at all. Of course, we have plenty of time to be focusing on this. So the idea of navigating and working through this is hard. It takes a lot of effort. I've started to see organisations now and partner with organisations who've started putting in chief happiness officers, which has been really novel and interesting.
Are they dogs? I feel like it would be.
No. But the day someone hires a dog as a chief happiness officer is the day I sell my company and work for them. No, I'm kidding. So this looks like an absolute mess. Now we're going to play a game with this absolute mess. This is kind of like when you throw all the puzzle pieces out on the table and you hope that someone's going to figure it out. It's quite messy. What we're going to do for the really competitive people in the room, right? You need to find each number sequentially in this. So to start you off, number 1 is there. Do we all see number 1? Right there, gorgeous, fantastic. No more jumping ahead for the competitive people, okay? So you're going to find each number in order. So you'll find 1, then you need to find 2, then 3, then 4. Don't cheat and get to 23 and take that as a 2 and 3, right? That's 23, it's a different number, okay? So you need to get, I'm going to give you like 15 seconds to get as high up as you can. Now to up the stakes and the ante, this is worth 500 arbitrarily made up happiness points to whoever gets the highest, okay? Here we go. 3. Does everyone understand the game first before we do this? I did this recently and someone was like, I don't know what's going on. 15 seconds, get as high as you can. 3, 2, 1, go. 1 is up the top. If no one got to 1, I'm going to have questions. Get as high as you can, find the numbers.
I can't find 2.
Quick, find the numbers. 5 seconds. 3, 2, 1. How'd we go?
6.
6. Now I feel like an auctioneer. 6, 9, 10. Anyone higher than 10? You got 1? Did anyone not find 2? Be honest. Cool. What did you get to? 12. Damn. 12 and 15 seconds. Anyone beat 12? Give her a round of applause. 500 arbitrarily made up happiness points. Don't spend them all at once. I hear they go up in value. So, more importantly, how did you feel during that little experiment? Stressed, panicked, anxious. Anyone get really frustrated with themselves? For those who didn't find 2, how was that experience? Stupid, lost. Did anyone just plain old give up and go, nah, fuck number 6? Number 6 is dead to me. Anyone do that? No, okay, we're persistent. We're a resilient and persistent bunch. How interesting that our emotional experience of solving that problem was so negative, so difficult. But if I told you that there was a method to the madness, if we looked at the chaos of how do we actually improve employee experience, and I went, hey, there's actually a pathway here that you need to follow, all of a sudden it becomes a little bit more manageable. I'm going to show you that pathway and we're going to do it again. 15 more seconds, I want to see how high you get. Now obviously you have a little advantage because you've already done the first 12 or 1, right? I'll help you, I'll point out 2 in the next one. So what I'm going to show you is this simple little grid pattern. 1 is here, and it's all going to follow the infinity sign. So 2 will be somewhere here, 3 will be here, 4 will be here, 5, 6, 7, 8. Do we understand? It's an infinity shape. Yeah. Go, 15 seconds, see how high you get. Follow the infinity sign. Keep following it. So 5, 4. A few extra seconds while I drink. Okay, how do we do? 17, 20, 27, damn. 25? We got high. Okay, quick question. I want to check in with everyone. Did anyone, be honest, this is a safe space and I'm only going to judge you a little bit, okay? A lot of it afterwards. Did anyone do worse once I told them? My God, there's always one. Thank you, thank you. Every room, there's 1 or 2 people who are like, I don't understand what an infinity symbol is. This ain't working for me. I'm just moving my head, hoping for the best. You don't actually have to shake your head to see the numbers. I appreciate the honesty. You can have 200 points. Okay, so, more importantly, how did we feel that time around?
Pretty great.
Better, pretty great, confidence, clear, right? This is what happens when you give someone a roadmap for actually solving complex problems. And I'd say solving happiness at work is a complex problem to solve. So this is what I did my master's thesis in. I went back and I said, hey, I've done my undergrad and all this study in finding out that happiness matters and is important. How do we do it in a workplace? And that's what my master's was in, studying. I did a lit review. For those who know, it means a hell of a lot of coffee and late nights just reading so many journal articles. I looked at the last 15 years of research from any capitalistic, individualized developed nation. So stuff that was relevant to our context. Right? And what I found was trends coming through. Much like we spoke about at the start, about people finding the trends now for what's a priority at work, I found 5 things that underpinned happy and thriving workplaces. Well-being. High degrees of well-being. We're going to expand on what that means. Engagement, culture, leadership, and resilience. Now, resilience was an interesting one because for me, it's almost an outcome of the other 4. I debated whether I'd include it in my final thesis because I said this is almost an outcome. The reason we include it as a separate factor is it's almost a lag measure where it tells you how long things have gone wrong for. So I've seen organisations that score low in well-being, but their resilience is still quite high because it's due to a recent change. And so resilience is kind of like, hey, how long has this been an issue? So it's still useful to look at all the time. Resilience being how well do we adapt to challenge and change? And my God, are we adapting to a lot of challenge and change right now in the world? And if you think that's slowing down, I've got news for you, it's not. Right? The rate of change is speeding up. We need people who are adaptable in the face of change. So these were the 5 that we found. Chances are, some of these are recognisable. They're not crazy new terms, right? We've been talking about well-being at work since about the 90s. We've been talking about engagement at work since about the 80s. These things have come up. We're talking about culture a lot more recently than we used to. The challenge that I found was that most organisations are taking a disjointed approach to these. They're only focusing on one or the other, or they're only measuring one or the other. The amount of organisations I speak to that measure engagement and none of the other 4. And they wonder why their people are leaving when their engagement scores are good. Because you don't have an engagement issue. You've got a well-being issue. Right? Oh, I just pressed it. So we need to take this comprehensive approach where we bring them all together. They work together, they impact each other, they link to each other. I would argue what we're seeing from the research is leadership impacts the top 3 very heavily. Very heavily. Right? It's a disjointed amount how much it impacts it. So my team and I brought this together and we created a tool, an evidence-based tool, called the Workplace Happiness Diagnostic, where we went in and anonymously surveyed. We sent 5 surveys, 1 for each of the pillars, to every single employee in organisations. We worked with teams of 15 up to teams of 800 through different parts of the world. And for anyone who's run a survey before, do you want the cheat code to getting a high response rate? It's called emotional bribery. Right, it works really well, emotional manipulation. So we're a social enterprise, which means everything we do is tied to a United Nations global goal. Like when someone enrolls individually at the college to learn these skills, we fund a year of education access for a child in a developing nation, just as part of their enrolment fees. We just think we need to give back to the world. So what we did when we sent these out to organisations, what we've been doing for the last 5 years, says, hey, this is fully anonymous, it's run by a third-party company, none of the raw data will ever end up in your manager's lap. So it's unidentifiable. So really high psychosocial safety to start with. Secondly, we said, it takes 5 minutes to do each survey, 25 minutes total. For every completed survey, the team who's doing this for us is going to donate 1 day of clean drinking water to a community in need. You know what happened? Is there was a little voice that sat in the back of people's mind that went, if I don't do a 5-minute survey today, someone doesn't drink. Which is not necessarily exactly how it works, but by God did it work. Global average for survey response rates for organisations is about 28%. Pathetically low. So who are we going to hear from if we're getting 28% response rate? The really pissed off or the really brown nosy, right? So we don't get the vast majority. And I'd argue the vast majority are who we need to invite on this journey with us. Our response rate, on average, for the last 5 years has been 72%. Right? From a little bit of emotional manipulation and from privacy, giving people confidentiality. And importantly, taking their leaders through the journey of knowing that a survey does not end when you get the results back. That is the start of the journey. If you get results back and do nothing with it, you have eroded trust. You have to follow through on this journey. So we lead that. And what we came to was this. A measure that not only measured their 5 impactors of happiness, but broke them down into subcategories. So we could see, if you don't score well in well-being, is it because you have a physical well-being issue at work or a social well-being issue at work? There are 7 types of well-being at work. Most people don't know this. And so we could go to an organisation and say, this is the area of well-being you need to improve on. And this is the area you do really well. Talk about it. Like sometimes the hard part is not fixing the problems. It's organisations do good things and then don't talk about it. And they expect their candidates to somehow know and their employees to somehow know. Right? I'll say very clearly, anxiety thrives in ambiguity. If you are ambiguous about what comes back when you do employee surveys, people will go to anxiety and worst case thinking. Talk about what you do well, right? And address the issues. So we started measuring this for organisations. They get a big chunky report, anywhere from 30 pages through to 90, and we talk them through it and go, this is what you do well, these are your gaps, this is what you need to do to improve. And then one of my team, this wasn't my idea, I wish it was, came to me and said, hey, the organisations that don't score well get so much value out of this because you basically tell them what to do to start improving happiness in the workplace over the next 3 years. The organisations that do well currently get like a high five and a thumbs up and a pat on the back. Not as much value for them. So we created something called the Happy Workplace Accreditation, where we will pin our reputation as a college to your workplace, and we will put our money where it is and say, this is a great place to work, this is a good place to work for these reasons. And then they retest and reaccredit. What that then led to was us going, again, all of my work is pattern recognition. We started doing this with teams, we got the measurements back, and we started finding common things that workplaces could do to enhance their score. And that's what I'm going to leave you with tonight and share with you, is what we can all do to drive workplace happiness. Because we all have a role to play in this. From an individual level, for all of us as individuals, I think fundamentally we all need to improve our emotional literacy. Massively. So who's familiar with Brené Brown? Yeah, okay, another in my top 5 best researchers of all time for happiness. I was so fortunate a few years ago, myself and my entire team at BU went and spent a half day with her and her team to learn about what she does. She's incredible. And she shared with us there that the gold standard for emotional literacy is, can you recognise and name distinct emotions? Can you tell them apart from each other? Like, what's annoyed versus frustrated? What's that actually mean? Gold standard is, as adults, we should be able to do 30 distinct emotions. Anyone want to hazard a guess what the average is in Australia and New Zealand?
5.
A little bit higher, come on.
Give us more credit.
Give us more credit. Lower than 15.
11.
Close to 8. 7 to 9, well, 8's pretty well spot on actually. 7 to 9 depending on the research you look at. So for some reason 8 didn't register in my head. I was like 7 to 9, not 8. 8 is spot on. I'll say that again. The gold standard for emotional literacy, our ability to recognise and name distinct emotions, should be 30. The average adult can do 7 to 9. We have a fundamental education gap in learning about our emotions. And it's up to all of us to change that. Learn about them aggressively. I'm going to send, actually, I'll do you all a favour. I'll send my favourite tool for helping with emotional literacy with the slides to this. It's called a feelings wheel. It's by Gloria Wilcox. It's a great resource. You start in the middle, you go, how am I feeling today? Do this with your teams. We call it a 2-word check-in. If you were to capture how you're feeling in only 2 words, what 2 words on this wheel represent it? Cuts past all the thoughts, cuts past all the bullshit, and just gets to the heart very quickly. I've seen people passively aggressively get the feelings wheel printed on a pillow and give it to their less emotionally intelligent loved ones for Christmas. I'm not endorsing that, but I am saying you have like 9 months before Christmas to order that pillow. Right, so I'll send it with you. So emotional literacy. Second one, learn how to practice healthy selfishness. Now what I mean by this, I think a lot of us, particularly those who are in a caring-based or helping-based role, have this deep fear, and I had the same thing, this deep ingrained fear of being perceived as selfish or putting ourselves first. Has anyone ever like tried to prioritize a bit of me time and immediately felt overwhelming guilt about all the other shit that you're meant to do? Yeah, kind of hard to rest when your brain's going, you're bad for resting, right? You need to do all this other stuff. We're always meant to be running. It's exhausting. And I understand. Now, please don't take away from this event. My God, please, 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 don't take away that happiness researcher guy said I need to be more selfish and go out and be an absolute a-hole to whoever you meet tonight. The world has enough selfish leaders right now. Holy shit, aren't we seeing that on the global stage? Right? We need more healthy selfish leaders. What healthy selfishness is, best way I've learned to describe it. For those who have ever been on a plane before, the safety briefing at the start says, in the case of an emergency, an oxygen mask will fall from the ceiling. What's it say next? Right? It doesn't say, help everyone around you, you selfish bitch. Right? It says, put your own mask on first, and then help others, including children. They're even saying like, hey, look after yourself first, then look after the kids. Why? Oh, you can't look after others without looking after yourself. But how easy is it to forget that day to day and week to week? By God, I do the same, guys. I go through months sometimes where I go, whoa, my oxygen mask is not on. Right? So healthy selfishness is working through that guilt and shame. So traditional selfishness, I will put myself first at the expense of others. Healthy selfishness, I will prioritize my needs for the benefit of others. You fill up your own cup in order to pour into everyone else's, not to store for yourself. Right? To give back effectively and over the long term, we need to prioritize our own needs. Third one, invest into self-discovery. I may be perceived now, thankfully, after a lot of work, I'm now perceived on the global stage as an expert in happiness. Probably the crowning glory of my career so far was last year being invited to consult for the United Nations on the role that happiness has in making a better world. But I am not an expert on you. I never will be. Right? You've lived with you a hell of a lot longer than I have. I'm pretty sure there's no one in here that I've actually stalked for like 10 years, right? I'm meeting a lot of you for the first time. So when I talk about happiness, I often say like, you need to define happiness on your terms. There's some common threads that you can pull from the research. There's some tools that you can learn. But at the end of the day, defining what a happy, meaningful, successful life is, that's an inside job. And we live in a world at the moment that is so geared towards drawing our attention externally rather than internally. Do we all understand that our attention is worth a lot of money right now? There are very smart people who are paid to figure out how to keep you on social media longer, who are paid to get you to watch the news more. Right? Our attention paid to get you really hooked on maths. I don't know if that's a big thing here in Australia. Fuck me. Right? There's a huge thing in Australia. Married at first sight. Right? So like, we're told to look externally for our answers. We're told to go seek them outside. They're not out there, they're in here. So my favourite 2 ways to do this, I'll share them with you so you can practice them after tonight. Some form of meditation or mindfulness. If you're sitting there rolling your eyes, I did the same for 2 years. I was so skeptical of it. And you know why? Because I tried it and I freaking sucked at it. And then someone pulled me aside. One of my mentors said, hey, how do you feel you're going with meditation? I said, terribly. And he goes, okay, well, you're new at it. What were you expecting? And he says, what else do you think you're terrible at? I said, I'm terrible at drawing. And he goes, when did you last draw? I was like, when I was 9. And he goes, so you draw as a 9-year-old. You meditate as an infant because you've never done it. And it just fundamentally, again, I went, oh, this is a skill. So I learned to get better at it. This doesn't mean I don't have a shaved head, I don't wear robes, I don't sit under a waterfall, right, in prayer pose. Some form of meditation and mindfulness matters, do it. Other one, some form of journaling. Get your thoughts and feelings out of your head. Because if you're trying to wrestle them in here, you're fighting at a home ground disadvantage. Right, if you're trying to work through your thoughts and feelings in here, you're only going to get the tail end of them. It's very hard to get them clear. So write, just start writing. I'm not going to overcomplicate it, just get it out. It's amazing what clarity comes from that. These are 3 things that every one of us can do to make the world a better place and to make workplaces happier. What our organisations need to do is meet us halfway on that. And what does this mean? Fundamentally, we need to measure it. Because we can't manage what we don't measure. We've all heard that saying before, right? This is why I spent the last 4 years studying how do we measure it, and I built that tool. So when we measure it, people get held accountable to it, you actually get to develop it, you can track what works and what doesn't, it's fantastic. So we need to measure it. Second one, fund it, for God's sake. Don't expect people to be magicians. The amount of times I see this happen in organisations, in people in culture teams or in HR teams, where it's like, hey, get this great outcome. You have no budget or time to do it. Have fun. Right, we need to fundamentally fund it. The world's best research on this, and we have a free calculator you can use that I'll send you, and you can take it to your boss, take it to your team. 1 to 3% of an employee's salary should go back into improving the employee experience. So for round numbers, because I'm not good at math, let's say someone's paid $100,000 a year. If they're a junior employee, paying $100,000 a year, my God, that's good, right? So let's say if you're a junior or a new employee, it's 1%. $1,000 per year goes into improving the employee experience. Now that might be learning and development initiatives, it might be wellbeing, it might be working with the great team at Extraordinary. They didn't even pay me to say that, right? So 1% goes into there. 2% if they're longer term, 3% if they're a leader or in a critically business important role. Like if you lost them, business is stuffed. That's not a lot of money to ask for. That was the number that Sean Aker and his team used to conclude that you get a $2.67 or $3.27 return on investment. Much more than that, you don't get much more of an investment. So there is a curve of diminishing returns, but 1 to 3% of an employee's salary, straight back into employee experience. We're looking good for funding. Third one, get leadership to buy in. Get leadership to buy in. Now we could do a whole workshop on how do you get stakeholders to buy in. In fact, I'm not going to because I know there's, there's some great resources from Lisa about this. There's actually a workshop next, I didn't even know. Next month, there is a workshop on how to get stakeholders to buy into your ideas. Attend, right? Because it's very, very hard. I'm not saying it's impossible. It's very hard to move the needle on employee experience and workplace happiness if the leaders just fundamentally don't get it and don't buy into it. And I hope you can use some of the stats and stuff from tonight. To bring us home, because I'm rapidly running out of time, I've probably gone over time already, but I like talking to you guys. So the third tier I promised you is the impact that this has on society. And this is one that I care most about. I'll tell you right now, I started BU Happiness College 8 years ago and said that our purpose and vision and the whole reason we exist is to grow global happiness. I had no idea how I was going to do that with a team of 7 people based out of Australia. I still don't really know how we're going to do it, but I'm now currently speaking in Auckland on International Happiness Day about these concepts and these terms. I've been invited to speak around the world. In September, I'll be speaking at an event in Thailand. I spoke in Bali last year about these concepts. I spoke to the United Nations last year. More and more we're seeing, I think on average between podcasts, LinkedIn, social media, all that, I think about 100,000 people a week on average are learning from what me and my team are putting out there. And we're starting to see a ripple effect. To the point, I got chills from this. 2 days ago, I got a message. We built a free tool for individuals to take called the Happiness Scorecard. It's like a little mini version of the workplace one, but it's free. It takes 7 minutes, and it's just for you to reflect on your own happiness. And at the end, you can say, do I want to talk to a coach about my results? Just to debrief with someone. No expectation to come to the college, just do I want to debrief? And someone said yes, they put their number in, and I went, I don't know that area code. Where is that? So I found them on LinkedIn, because I'm an A-grade online stalker, right? I can find anyone. Give me your email, let's go. So I found them, and I shot them a message that said, hey, saw that you did our happiness scorecard and that you wanted to have a chat. With the time zone difference, I don't actually know where you are. I'm assuming there's a time zone difference. Might be hard, here's the link to my calendar. And I thought that was going to be the end of it. No, wrong. Booked into the calendar. Had a call 2 days ago with someone in Botswana who had come across my tool because she was Googling International Day of Happiness, tools to help my team be happier at work. And just found it and took it for free and liked the science behind it. Literally today, as we speak right now, her entire team in her organisation in Botswana are completing their scorecards. Probably got a bunch of notifications going through my phone at the moment on Slack to reflect more intentionally on their happiness. This idea of growing global happiness is no longer some foreign concept to me. It's something that we're seeing in real time and that I hope all of you are going to play your part in because we need it. Who's familiar with these? Sustainable Development Goals. This is why I was invited to speak at the UN. Fundamentally, I do not believe that we're going to solve these global societal challenges with a disengaged, unhappy workforce. We're not. This is not going to happen. If we want to solve things like hunger, poverty, education, gender inequality, we need people who are skilled in the skills and science of happiness. We need people who can spread that ripple effect of happiness, the contagion effect. And we see that. We know that happiness does this. When you learn these skills, when you bring them to your workplace and to your life, it touches every single area of the Sustainable Development Goals. And we need it now more than ever. I cannot stress this enough. If I'm going to leave you with a message just this, please, please, please play your part in spreading the ripple effect of happiness. Like tonight's event is not Vegas, which means what happened here doesn't have to stay here. Thank you for laughing at that joke. My wife thought people wouldn't laugh at it. I test everything with my wife. She's like, people aren't going to laugh at that. I'm going to go home and be like, they laughed. The Vegas joke, landed, right? So take something you learned from tonight, go share it with someone. Talk about it tonight, talk about it tomorrow. Hell, International Happiness Day. I think every day we should focus on happiness to some degree. Take the slides, they're copyright free, send them to everyone, right? Spread it. Because together we can play our part in making the world a better place. And I'm hoping you'll join me on this because this is recent results on how our workforce is feeling. This is for Australia and New Zealand. They lump us together, by the way. They don't split us in the reporting. 23% of employees in Australia and New Zealand say they're thriving at work. 67% of people in Australia and New Zealand say that they're not engaged or they're quiet quitting. Who's heard quiet quitting as a term before? They're doing the bare bones minimum to just get through. 11%, someone just laughed knowingly like they're doing that, and I preach. And 11% are actively disengaging or what's called loud quitting. Loud quitting hasn't got as much media attention as last year as quiet quitting. Loud quitting is when you make work not only minimum expectation for yourself, but you ruin everyone else's work around you as well. And we've all worked with people like that because 11% of people are doing it, right? Concerningly, this is not a poll that I wanted us to get bronze medallion in the Olympics. When we look at the level of stress or what we feel day to day, Australia and New Zealand is the third most stressed area in the world. I'll say that again. The question is, did you experience the following feelings a lot of the day yesterday? Specifically stress. A lot of the day. They're not even saying, did you have a moment of stress? They're saying, was the majority emotion that you felt yesterday stress? Australia and New Zealand, 47%. Only beaten by East Asia and the United States and Canada. Again, I say very clearly, we are not going to solve the United Nations global goals with this. It's just not going to happen. Right? We cannot hope to solve humanity's greatest challenges with a workforce that's disengaged, dissatisfied, and unhappy. And I considered leaving it there, and then I realized it was a real bummer for an event about happiness. No one's going to walk happy and like, I feel so deflated from that guy's talk. So, I want to share with you to finish up why I am still hopeful. I'm still hopeful because we're seeing organisations that I shared before start to measure and lead with the employee experience. I'm hopeful because in 2019 I was being laughed out of rooms when I said I was studying happiness in the organisational setting, and now I'm invited to speak around the world. I've just signed a speaking deal and a book deal. Right? The fact that people care about this now is giving me hope. It's inspiring me. And the fact that all of you chose to come out tonight On a Thursday night where you could be anywhere else, to see someone that I'm guessing most of you have never frickin' heard of me, right? And you still chose to come out and to hear about my work and my research. I deeply appreciate that. My hope is that I can count not only all of you towards our ripple effect of happiness, but as a direct result of tonight, you go out and you spread that to people around you. And then I get to be real cheeky and count your loved ones, your family, your workplaces as part of the collective change that we are making towards a happier future. I'll finish with this thought. A happy workforce, I hope you agree with me tonight after the talk we've had. A happy workforce is not a luxury, it is a necessity and a priority for progress. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for playing your part in making the world happier. And thank you to the team for International Happiness Day. I appreciate all of it.